You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Today we get to consider children and music in the church for our Set Apart to Serve series.
Today's episode of The Coffee Hour is underwritten in part by Concordia University, Nebraska. You can learn more about Concordia University, Nebraska at cune.edu.
Today we head to Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Our guest, Dr. Sam Eatherton. He's Assistant Professor of Practical Theology, Kantor, and the Kreft Professor for Music Arts at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Dr. Eatherton, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Andy.
Also joining us today, Lois Eatherton. She's a teacher of music grades 5 through 8 at St. Paul's Lutheran School in De Pere, Missouri, and project coordinator for Children in Worship Initiative at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Lois, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I am surrounded by musicians today in the studio.
I mean, you're one too.
I am a musician, but not at the level of the rest of the folks in the room. So let's talk about church music and children and your role in that. What inspired you to consider full-time church work? We'll start with you, Lois.
All right. Well, I don't actually remember a time when I was not planning to be a Lutheran teacher. My parents were both Lutheran teachers. My older siblings are all in church work. I've been told the story that when I was 2 or 3, I said to my older sister that I wanted to be a nurse when I grew up. And she said, no, you're going to be a teacher. All I ever remember as a young child when somebody would ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was that I wanted to be a teacher and a mom. And I've been blessed to be both.
That is fantastic. Sam, what about you?
Similarly to Lois, I grew up in a church work family. My parents were both church workers. And so I don't really remember a time not being around church workers. And so my dad did encourage me to be a pastor, and I never really wanted to be a pastor. I didn't think I had those gifts. But he also saw I had gifts as a teacher and a musician. And so he and my mom both encouraged me in those ways too.
So let's talk about that journey. Both of you knew you wanted to be teachers, church workers in some capacity. Let's talk about the journey that got you where you are today. Lois, what was that journey like for you?
Well, during high school, as I said, I was the youngest of 4 siblings, and they had all become church workers. They had also all gone to Concordia, Nebraska, as had my parents. So I had 5 minutes of thinking in high school of maybe going somewhere else. But I went to Concordia, Nebraska, and was, it was all good, enjoyed that. And then our first call was to Trinity Lutheran in St. Joseph, Michigan. And I taught 4th grade there. Sam taught and did the church music there as well. And then from there, we went to Zion Lutheran in Dallas, Texas. And we were there for 20 years. And during much of that time, I was a stay-at-home mom, but also did some teaching there. And then we went to Trinity in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and I taught there. And just about 2 years ago, Sam was called to the seminary, and so we moved here to St. Louis. And now I'm working at St. Paul's De Pere and the seminary.
Yeah, fantastic. Sam, what about you? What was that journey like for you? I know a lot of this was together, but what was that journey like for you through your formation in high school, college?
Sure. As I mentioned, I was always encouraged by my parents, but also through my church life, being part of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Jackson, Missouri, where I grew up, and that's where my dad was the pastor. And just had a very good music program, a very good school, had a lot of good role models as teachers, but also musicians. And I got to sing in the choir with my mom at the church there in high school, and we had a good youth group. So very good church environment that made me very happy with church, but also at home too. My parents, being church workers, they always spoke very well of their jobs and in the church and loved the people. And so it was a very joyful kind of thing to be part of the church. And so that kind of turned my mind toward that way. And then I considered some other possibilities through high school with music, being part of that, maybe going into full-time music or things like that. But eventually, with encouragement from my parents and others, they saw that I had some gifts for teaching, and I thought Concordia Seward is the place to go. And I was fully intending to be a classroom teacher, elementary classroom teacher. And I did that the first year out of college. I taught 6th grade part of the day and then music part of the day. And then I was told halfway through the year that had been done by 2 people in the past. And so that's why we didn't have much time to sleep that first year. And so starting in the second year, I just did full-time music. And even though that wasn't my intention coming out of college. That was just kind of how I was steered by the Lord in that direction. And that's what I've done ever since, being a full-time musician in a school and in a church.
How did you grow professionally? Because I know you've continued your education since then as well.
Sure. I was encouraged by my principal, Rich Hackbarth, at St. Joe, Michigan, to start my master's degree. And so it was only 2 hours from Chicago, so I went to Concordia, Chicago for my master's during the summers, and that was quite a blessing to do that. Studied with some great people there, had a class with Carl Schalk while I was there, and just great music there. Learned a lot from Chuck Brown, and who's still there. And then a little bit later, I was encouraged by our Pastor Robert Priest in Dallas, Texas at Zion, to go on to get my doctorate. And so the church provided for that. There was a donor who provided the funds. The people of the church were very encouraging to me. Lois taught my classes for me during those years I was in the program, and she didn't want the 7th and 8th grade boys for some reason, so I still took them. But anyway, and so I went down to Baylor University and got my doctorate in church music there, and just always has been a pleasure to study and get to know more about the church and its music.
Yeah, you guys are both commissioned teachers, but you also obviously are both very talented musicians. What is that relationship of being a church worker, being among God's people and teaching, but also having this depth of music and music education? Because that obviously is something that both of you love to pair together and do in the classroom and also together as a family too. It's very important for your family as well. What is that relationship like of teaching and music in the church for you? Sam, let's start with, Lois. Let's go with Lois first.
Okay. When talking about teaching, I can't imagine teaching without having some music during the day. And I have spent, I think I figured this out one time, about half of my teaching time has been in a self-contained classroom. So 4th grade all day or 5th grade all day. And about half of it has been just music. So when I was teaching in those self-contained classrooms, we're singing a hymn in the morning with devotions. We're singing a hymn at the end of the day with closing prayer where, the lunch prayers are songs. Mm-hmm. The review for memory is songs, all sorts of stuff like that. I can't really imagine not doing that. But then also my involvement as being a member of the adult choir or a member of the handbells, and that my students and other church members see me and interact with me in those places too. And I've often talked to children about how they, as children, have this unique opportunity to serve in the same way or even in a more special way than some adults can, because they can sing. They can sing and they can serve in the church just as much as adults. They don't have to grow into this. And they can get people to come better than adults
That's
can.
True.
And so that's a special, a unique way that they can serve.
Sure. Yeah. Sam, what do you want to add?
A part of being Lutheran is being in music. I mean, it's been from the early church. Music was part of the church, just singing, expressing our faith through music. And, Martin Luther, of course, a musician himself, really praised the worth of music combined with the word. And so it's really part of who we are as Lutherans. And so we have this wonderful education system through elementary schools, high schools, and colleges, and there's a reason for that. We're about education and we're about music, and so being a music teacher, which I've been in elementary schools and high schools for almost 30 years before I came to the seminary, was just a great opportunity to talk about theology, the theology of the words, and the poetry of hymnody. I mean, having these excellently crafted poems or hymns, rather, and set to music. These are things that stick into children and adults, but as children, they soak up so much more and it sticks with them for a long time. And they're always asking questions as children and always interested in it. Lois was talking about some events recently in her teaching at St. Paul's, explaining things to kids, and they had all these questions. And it was an opportunity for Lois to talk about heaven and what happens when you die. And so there's that theological part of it too. But the music part just makes it a joy to learn and to recall later.
Speaking of children and teaching so many children, you also have raised children of your own through all of this as well. Let's talk about family life and the intersection here of family life and caring for all of God's people and souls with music and teaching music. But what does that mean for you at home too? And I know, going back and forth between being a parent at home and also being a teacher in a school. What does that look like over the years?
Right. So we have 5 children. They are now ages 15 to 25. And when they were young, I stayed home full time. And during all of those years, I always continued to be involved in adult choir and usually handbells as well, and often volunteered in Sunday school and other sorts of things like that. Those people in those groups, the adult choir especially, helped us raise our children. And that is one of those blessings of being a church worker that is hard to explain until you've lived it, that the congregation wants to take care of you, and they will if you let them. And so, we were at church a lot, all the time. Not all the time. But for example, on Wednesdays were really long days for Sam, from early morning, getting there for school, chapel, especially during Lent and Advent, church, choir practice, handbell practice, all the stuff. And I could have, with young children, just kind of stayed at home and been maybe a little bitter about, Dad's gone all day. But often I would figure out supper that we could take with us, and we would eat together at church so that Sam could stop for a few minutes, join us, and then we would go on with the rest of the day. So I think it's just what we chose to do was we just embraced the fact that we were going to be at church and school a lot. And I don't think our kids have any negative memories of that. They, in fact, 3 of the 4 are already church workers. The 4th is studying that right now, and we'll see what number 5 decides.
Sam, why is it important for your family to have this bond of music together? You guys still do music together as a family when you're able to get together. Why is that something important for you to have your family have this shared tradition of music among all of you?
Well, it helped to teach them the faith through all those years. Lois listened to a lot of music in the car commuting, in Dallas all those years. But we also, we did family devotions. Often we would do a hymn. It was fun when they were getting older and could read music a little bit more. We'd start singing in parts, and then the younger ones are figuring that out too. And, we get together and sing now when we're all together for a meal or something. And it's pretty fun because, we figure out who's going to do what parts, and they all play instruments too. And so we've been able to do, when I've played hymn festivals before, sometimes some of the kids get to come along and play trumpet or trombone or cello or something like that. So it's just, it's wonderful to be able to make music together with other people, especially when they're your own family.
Yeah.
We're talking about children and music in the church with the Eathertons. We'll continue the conversation in just a moment here on The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Are you looking to gain practical insights and spiritual encouragement in a format that fits your life? Discover the treasures of Christ-centered learning with Concordia University, Nebraska. Utilizing an online, self-paced learning platform, Concordia Nebraska's new Studia Vitae program will offer a non-credit continuing education courses featuring lifelong learning opportunities in a variety of focused areas. Courses begin in January 2026 and registration opens soon. Learn more at cune.edu/CEU. That's cune.edu/CEU.
Welcome back to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
We are in our Set Apart to Serve conversation today, talking with Dr. Sam Eatherton and Lois Eatherton about family life as well as their lives as church workers, particularly in the area of church music and teaching children music and bringing children along in the life of the church through the gift of music. Let's talk about your current roles as a music teacher at St. Paul's de Pere and also as a coordinator for the Children in Worship Initiative. What does that look like? What's music like for 5th through 8th grade at St. Paul's to pair.
Right. So the 5th through 8th graders at St. Paul's get to choose to be in band or choir if they want to. And so I am not directing the band or the choir, although I assist with the choir. But the way that the schedule is, the students who are not in band get to be in a music class with me. And we spend that time, I get the students twice a week. We have a hymn of the month, so that's always part of what we're doing, learning that, teaching a lot through that. I usually preview hymns that are coming up in church or in chapel so that they're ready for those too. As you might imagine, not everybody in our Lutheran school is Lutheran, so some of this is new to them. And I am excited that I get to teach that to them, as sometimes a lot of theology is taught through those, and a lot of music can be taught through, musical concepts can be taught through hymns. So that is probably 50% of what we do. I also teach recorder. It's a great way, especially to the 5th graders, to help them to learn to read music accurately. We do handbells, especially with 7th and 8th graders. With 7th and 8th grade, have been studying Divine Service 1 and going through very specifically about how and why we do what we do. Again, the faith and the music are going hand in hand. You just have to be on your toes. You have to be
with middle school, yeah.
Yes, the questions that they're going to come up, and your whole lesson plan is thrown out the window. But they had such good questions. I'm not about to not answer those. So definitely. And then at the seminary, I am the project coordinator for the Children in Worship Initiative, which is, we received a grant from the Lilly Endowment. And with that grant, we have started a children's choir at the seminary, and I get to direct that. It's not just seminary children that are part of it. It's the whole community. Anybody can be a part of that. And we are also, as the coordinator, I'm helping to coordinate workshops and things that Sam and I are leading at places about children's choirs and about young children in worship, just helping congregation leaders in those areas.
And you do a fantastic job with all of that too, if I may say so. The children's choir at the seminary has really been a blessing to be able to collaborate with whenever we get to sing with the choir at the seminary that Sam, that you direct. Having those opportunities to sing all together with everyone has been really special the last, I suppose, year or so?
Yes, year and a half.
Yeah. So Sam, what do you get to do at the seminary? You have a lot of music that happens, and that is all in the space of formation of pastors, deaconesses, church workers. What do you get to do at the seminary?
Yes. So as the cantor, I work with John Vicker, the dean of the chapel, to make the chapel, daily chapel work. So I play for most of the chapel services, organ or piano. I direct our little chapel choir. I lead Ladamus, which is the men's choir. We just had our home concert last night and went on tour to Southern California last week. And so that's a lot of fun. We also have the St. Louis Lutheran Chorale, which is a community chorus mainly for Lutherans who like to sing. And they're really quite good. So we sing for 4 major events at the seminary each year. And those 4 main events are the ones that the children's choir sings for. I direct a youth choir. We have 27 high school youth in that choir, and they sing for those main events too. And I also help teach some classes at the seminary as well. Chapel is central to the life of the seminary for seminarians and for faculty too. It happens at 9:35, which is right in prime time of the morning. There are classes before, and there's one more morning class afterwards. But we break at 9:30 and have chapel every day. And so, as formation, if a future pastor is in chapel every day, he is getting experience being formed in these services from our Lutheran service book that really they can't get any other way. We sing matins and morning prayer. We do the prayer and preaching service. We do all the divine services throughout the course of the year. And so, as future deaconesses and future pastors are in this every day. And granted, not all of them can come every day, but just having that as a regular part of their seminary life is so important to the seminary and to the future of the church.
With chapel being such a key part of formation of church workers, pastors, deaconesses, and other church workers at seminary, and your role as Kantor, what do you take into consideration about your role and how that plays a key part in the formation of church workers? What are you thinking about when you're planning for music and for chapel and things like that?
Yeah. So, I am thinking what are we teaching through the music is one thing. Being an educator, you're always thinking about what you're teaching, but you're always teaching something. You're never teaching nothing. And so what can we give our students that will be the most helpful for them, that's the most worthwhile? And that's really why we use Lutheran Service Book as the basic tool that we have for our worship. Learning those hymns and learning those services, those words of Scripture and those beautiful words by poets throughout the centuries, putting these things into the mouths of our people. So I want to help choose the very best of what's out there. And I think what we have in Lutheran Service Book is really a good compilation of the best of what's out there for Lutheran worship.
Let's talk about Holy Week for just a minute. And because as we're recording, we're approaching Holy Week, and when this airs, it will be post Holy Week. So it's on our minds right now. Anybody who is a part of the church, this is the season that we're in, and it can be very busy for many people, especially for people who work in the church, especially church musicians. There's a lot happening. Let's talk about some of the joys, some of the challenges of being a church worker. What are some of the joys and challenges that both of you have experienced throughout the years as church workers, as church musicians, Lois?
Well, I'll start first by saying the joys or challenges of being the spouse of the church musician.
That's fair.
Especially when, there were young kids at home or children of any, that, it's a very busy week. And we purposely would not plan anything extra during Holy Week. And kind of like what I said before, that I just learned to embrace it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be busy. What can we do to make that easier? Can we have a meal at church one of the nights so we can still see Dad and those sorts of things. And then just that our whole family would be involved as soon as the kids were old enough. They always attended, but as soon as they were old enough, are they acolytes? Are they singing in the choir? Oh, we need a substitute in the handbell choir tonight, and that's one of our kids. Those sorts of things, that they were always a part of it. So I guess just that we went into it knowing it was going to be busy and then just embraced that. And Easter Sunday morning, Sam would always leave, I don't know, whatever, early time. Usually the rest of us might have been awake, but then I would wake up the kids by playing the Hallelujah chorus really loud in the house. And they'd be up and very excited and getting ready. And we have these pictures of the kids all dressed and ready to go. And it's 6:15 a.m. and we're on our way to church. And then we also as they got a little older, we got into the practice of blasting the Hallelujah chorus from our minivan as we're driving.
That's amazing.
Because how cool is that?
Why not?
Yes. So, we just developed these traditions that were exciting and fun for us. And I'm trying to think if anybody, except for maybe a toddler or baby along the way who was upset about, getting up. But other than that, they were usually excited about all of this.
I will be expecting the Hallelujah chorus blasting from one of your vehicles on Easter Sunday morning. Right. Sam, what about you? Joys and challenges of being a church worker?
Yes. So the challenge is you're spending a lot of time at church, of course, and you have to be a planner. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants in Holy Week. Really, the preparation has happened long before that week. And so if you've done your work and planned, things are probably going to go pretty smoothly. It's harder when you're first out of school because you don't have as much experience, as many pieces, you don't know as much. So there's a little more stress I felt the first couple of years figuring it all out. But that tended to get easier. I think one of the important things is you just have to have a joy about doing what you're doing. If you don't like what you're doing, then go do something else. And so even though it's busy, there's really a sense of joy and worth about what you're doing, and it's exciting and it's hard work, but work is also play, especially when you're a musician. I think to enjoy it while you're doing it, I think is an important thing, and that joy just comes from not just playing the music, but working with all the people, whether it's in choir or the children's choir, all those things, just being with the people and helping them to serve and worship during Holy Week. It's a great blessing.
Set Apart to Serve is about building this culture of considering and encouraging church workers for the future. What one thing would you say to parents or grandparents or others who care about children and their future as well? What's one thing that you would share with parents or grandparents or maybe pastors or others who care about children?
Right. So I just like to encourage anyone who is thinking about it, if they see some gifts and talents in someone that they think, oh, you would be a good teacher or you would be a good DCE, to say something about it. And especially to the parents or grandparents of those children, if you are not already, well, even if you are already in church work, often the question that comes up or the issue is money. The college is going to be so expensive and you don't make that much money. And I would say it's going to be okay. And it's from lived experience. Our fourth child is in a Concordia right now, and it's going to be okay. We raised 5 children on mostly one income in a large city. It's going to be okay. So the money issue is only an issue if you let it be. God will make a way for it to happen. And the Concordias have come a long way with making it a lot better and easier for people to be able to afford it. Church workers, especially.
Yeah.
When we were on our Ladamus tour in Southern California last week, we got to meet Pastor David Berner, who is 103 years old, and we met with him before one of our concerts. He graduated from Concordia Seminary in 1947, had sung in the men's choir, and it was a great conversation. And, he gave the guys some advice. I'm going to give you one piece of advice. It's to always be aware of what God is preparing you for, like the next thing. And so I think that's something that both parents and teachers, people in the congregation can help young people see what their gifts and talents are, but also for young people, especially as they get into middle school and high school, to be self-aware of what their gifts and abilities are, because, perhaps God is preparing them with, whether it's, music or just experience, maybe teaching some Sunday school, and they've realized that they really enjoy helping people learn. Or, maybe they have this real gift for talking to people and helping people out, and they have a pastoral sort of heart, and maybe that's the direction they can be steered. So always be looking for how God is preparing you for the next thing.
Our guest today, Dr. Sam Eatherton, Assistant Professor of Practical Theology, Kantor, and the Kreft Professor for Music Arts at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Dr. Eatherton, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Lois Eatherton, Teacher of Music, grades 5 through 8 at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in De Pere, Missouri, and Project Coordinator for Children in Worship Initiative at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Lois, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
You can learn more about Set Apart to Serve by visiting lcms.org/SAS. You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit kfuo.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.